My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old, and I used to believe in true love. The kind you see in movies, where the man holds your hand through thick and thin, and you grow old together. I met my husband, David, in college. He was charming, always smiling, and told the funniest jokes. Everyone loved David. He had that kind of energy that made rooms brighter. We got married young, maybe too young. But I was sure he was my forever. He held me close when my mom passed away. He worked 2 jobs while I finished nursing school. He even sang to our newborn son in the middle of the night, so I could sleep. For years, I thought I had it all. But then, something changed. David started coming home late. At first, it was work. At least, that's what he said. Just some overtime, babe. Gotta make sure we're good.
But the overtime kept happening.
Then it was drinks with the guys, followed by traffic was crazy, and finally silence. He stopped trying to explain. I could feel him pulling away. Like I was chasing a ghost of the man I married. And then, I found her. The mistress. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry, not then. Because what David didn't know was that I had my own secret. And when I dropped that DNA test on the table, everything changed. Let me take you back to how it all started. It was a Tuesday morning, cloudy and cold, and I was packing my son's lunch. He's 6, with David's dimples and my curly hair. His name is Tyler, and he's the best thing that ever happened to me. That morning, I was cutting up apples, putting in a juice box, the usual. David walked in, grabbed his keys, and didn't even look at me. No good morning. No kiss. Nothing. David, I said, softly, you forgot to say goodbye to Tyler. He paused for a second, then mumbled, I'm late, and walked out the door. I stood there, holding a sandwich in one hand and a broken heart in the other. Later that day, I dropped Tyler off at school and drove to my shift at the clinic. I worked as a nurse, and helping people always gave me peace. It reminded me that pain was temporary and healing was possible. But even as I bandaged wounds and smiled at patients, something inside me ached. I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. The cologne that wasn't his usual brand. The hotel charges on our credit card. The way he flinched when I touched his phone. So I did what any woman with a gut feeling would do. I followed him. I felt like a spy, heart racing, hands shaking as I kept my distance behind his car. He drove to a neighborhood across town. Parked outside a small, neat house. Knocked once. And she opened the door.
Tall.
Blonde. Younger than me. She smiled and kissed him like I didn't exist. I drove away with tears pouring down my face, my knuckles white around the steering wheel. But not because he was cheating, no, that part hurt, sure, but the real pain? He left us. He left Tyler. David started staying out even longer. Soon, he stopped sleeping at home altogether.
He didn't call.
Didn't ask about Tyler. It was like we were erased from his life. Like we were just leftovers. That night, I sat on the bathroom floor with the lights off, crying as quietly as I could. I didn't want Tyler to hear. But he must have sensed something, because he came in and hugged me without saying a word. He just wrapped his little arms around me and whispered, "It's okay, Mommy." That hug saved me. It was in that moment I promised myself I wouldn't break. I wouldn't fall apart for a man who didn't even care to look back. I needed to protect Tyler. I needed to survive this. The next few weeks were a roller coaster. I focused on work, on being the best mom I could. I found a small support group for women going through divorce. It helped a little, but what helped most was the love I poured into my son. His laugh. His drawings. The way he'd say, "You're my favorite person." And then, one afternoon, while folding laundry, I found a box. David had left some of his things behind, probably by accident. In it, I found old photos, a few receipts, and a paper. A hospital record. From before Tyler was born. It said something I hadn't expected. David had doubts. About paternity. He'd asked for a DNA test when I was pregnant.
He never told me.
But he had done it. And the results were never opened. The envelope was still sealed.
I stared at it for a long time.
My heart pounded. My head spun. Why would he do that? Why keep it hidden? And then I thought, maybe it wasn't about the past. Maybe it was a sign. So, I got my own test done. Quietly. Secretly. I took Tyler to the lab, swabbed his cheek,
Sent the results in.
and waited. And while I waited, David finally came back. Not to us, but to take his things. He walked in like a stranger. Like we didn't build a life together. Like we weren't a family. I'm moving in with Madison, he said, not even looking me in the eye. She makes me happy. I nodded. Not because I was okay, but because I needed him to think I was. I asked, "Are you going to keep seeing Tyler?" He shrugged. "We'll figure out." That's when I knew. He wasn't just leaving me. He was abandoning his son. And then, 2 days later, the results came. I opened them slowly. My hands were ice. My mouth dry. And what I saw made the world stop. David was not Tyler's biological father. But the thing is, I never cheated.
Ever. So how? How could this be?
I rushed to the clinic. I needed answers. I demanded to see the records, the charts, the delivery paperwork. Something wasn't right. Tyler had been born after a long and painful labor. It was chaos. I remember blacking out after delivery. They had to move us to a different room, something about another emergency. The nurse at the front desk listened kindly. She pulled my file, looked confused. "Ma'am," she said, "it says here your baby was moved to the nursery alone for a few hours, due to your recovery." But what? I asked. She bit her lip. There were 2 Sarahs who gave birth that night. 2 baby boys. We're going to look into this. Please stay calm. And that's when it hit me. There was a chance. Tyler wasn't my biological son either. But I raised him. I loved him. He was mine. He is mine. Still, I needed the truth. Days later, the hospital confirmed it. There had been a mix-up. A terrible, life-altering mistake. 2 baby boys. 2 mothers. The babies were switched at birth. I stood in the parking lot, staring up at the sky, trying to make sense of it all. And that's when David showed up at my house again. He was yelling, accusing me. "Tyler isn't mine. I saw the results. You liar. You cheated." I didn't say a word. I just went inside. Came back with the envelope. The one with his name on it. And I dropped it on the table. He opened it. Read the hospital's letter. And his face turned pale. He sat down, stunned. And before he could say a word, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and standing there was a woman holding a little boy who looked just like me. For a moment, no one said anything. The woman at the door was holding the hand of a boy who looked about 6, same age as Tyler. He had my brown eyes, my same curls, even the tiny dimple on his chin I used to get teased about in school. He stared up at me, curious, while clutching his mother's hand. "Are you Sarah Miller?" the woman asked gently. I nodded slowly. My mouth was dry. My heart thumped so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. "I'm Rachel," she said. "Rachel Thomas. I think our babies were switched at birth." I felt the ground move under my feet. Behind me, David was still sitting at the table, holding the hospital letter like it had burned him. I turned back to him, then to Rachel, and finally to the boy standing beside her. That boy was mine. But he wasn't the one I'd raised. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I should cry, or scream, or hug him. The air felt too heavy, like we were all trapped in a dream we couldn't wake up from. "I just found out yesterday," Rachel said. "The hospital called me. They said they made a mistake 6 years ago, that our sons were swapped. They gave me your name, your address. I thought you deserved to know." Her voice cracked at the end. And just like that, I wasn't angry anymore. We were both mothers. Both victims. Both caught in something no one ever should experience. I stepped outside slowly and knelt down in front of the boy. "Hi," I whispered. "I'm Sarah." He smiled shyly.
"Hi.
I'm Noah."
Noah.
That was the name she gave him. He had my face. I looked back at Rachel. "Would you like to come in?" She nodded, eyes misty. "Thank you." We sat in the living room, awkwardly at first. Tyler was playing with blocks in the corner, unaware of the storm that had just blown through his world. David stayed silent the whole time, sitting stiffly like he didn't know what to do or where to go. Rachel and I talked. Shared timelines. Showed baby photos. Her Noah was born just a few minutes before my Tyler. Our rooms were side by side in the hospital. Same nurses. Same doctor. The night of the switch, there had been a power outage. Systems went offline. The hospital was overcrowded and understaffed. A perfect storm for a terrible mistake. I listened numb. I stared at Noah, realizing this was the child I gave birth to. The child I never got to hold in those first moments. The child I didn't sing lullabies to at night or kiss scraped knees for. And then I looked at Tyler, my Tyler, and felt my heart crack. I raised him. I fed him, loved him, stayed up with him when he had fevers. I taught him how to count, how to write his name, how to ride a bike without training wheels. He was mine in every way that mattered. Rachel seemed to sense what I was thinking. She reached for my hand. "I don't want to take him from you," she whispered. I just want to know him. And maybe let Noah know you too." I nodded. My voice barely worked. "That's what I want too. But David?" He exploded. "This is insane," he shouted, standing up so fast the chair clattered behind him. "So you're telling me I wasted 6 years raising someone else's kid? And now I'm just supposed to act like everything's okay?" I turned to him, furious. "You didn't raise anyone. You walked out, David. You checked out months ago. The only person who's been here for Tyler is me." "Because I thought he was mine," he yelled. "And he isn't. So why should I stay?" Rachel flinched, and even Noah looked scared. I stood up, fists clenched. "You don't deserve either of these boys. Not Tyler. Not Noah. They need love, David. Not someone who runs when it's hard. You made your choice." He looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. He just stormed out, slamming the door behind him. That was the last time we saw him for weeks. After that day, everything changed. Rachel and I took it slow. We decided to meet up once a week, in parks or indoor play areas, to let the boys get to know each other. Tyler was confused at first. I told him that Noah was special, that he was kind of like a twin brother he didn't grow up with. I didn't go into all the details. He was too young to carry that burden, but he understood enough to be curious. And the truth? They got along so well. They played, they laughed, they even looked out for each other. Like they'd been connected from the very beginning. It warmed something in my chest that had felt frozen since the day David left. Rachel and I grew close too. We became more like sisters than strangers. We talked about school schedules, favorite foods, parenting tips. We leaned on each other because no one else could understand what we were going through. And then one afternoon, she told me something that stopped me cold. "I got a message from David," Rachel said quietly. We were sitting in her backyard while the boys chased butterflies. My jaw tensed. "What did he say?" "He wants to see Noah."
My heart sank. Of course he did.
Now that he knew Noah was his biological son, he wanted to play father again. "He doesn't deserve that," I said. "He abandoned Tyler." Rachel looked torn. "I know. I'm not sure what to do. I want to protect Noah, but I also think he deserves to know who his biological father is. Even if it's just a little." I sighed. I don't trust him. Not for a second. Neither of us said anything for a while. The boys ran past us, giggling. And then, as if fate was listening, my phone rang. It was David. I let it ring. But he didn't give up. He started texting, calling, leaving voicemails. Then one night, I came home to find him sitting on the porch. He looked different. Rough. Tired. Like life had finally caught up to him. "I need to talk," he said.
I didn't want to.
I wanted him gone. But I also knew he wouldn't stop. So I let him in. We sat across from each other, like strangers in our own home. He looked around. At the walls. The photos. The toy cars on the floor. Everything he walked away from. "I messed up," he said. I didn't respond. I was scared. I thought I wasn't good enough. I wanted something easy, something exciting. But Madison left me last week. Said I wasn't the man she thought I was. I stayed quiet. I want to make things right. I want to be in Noah's life. Maybe even Tyler's. If you'll let me. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And then I asked, why now?
He paused.
I got diagnosed with something, he said finally. Kidney disease. Early stage. But serious. I don't have anyone. No family. No friends. I thought maybe I could start again. Be a better man. And that's when I realized he didn't come back out of love. He came back because he needed something. But what he didn't know was that Tyler had overheard everything.
From the hallway.
And as David stood up to leave, thinking he'd won some small piece of ground, Tyler stepped into the room, tears in his eyes. And he asked the one question that shattered everything. Did you ever love me at all? The room went silent. David stood frozen, as if Tyler's voice had knocked all the air out of his lungs. My sweet little boy stood in the doorway, clutching his teddy bear, his bottom lip trembling. His eyes, usually so full of joy, looked broken. Did you ever love me at all? He repeated, softer this time. David looked at him, looked right at him, but no words came out. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Tyler, I said gently, walking over to him, kneeling down. It's okay, baby. You didn't have to hear all that. But Tyler shook his head. I wanted to know. I wanted to know why he stopped hugging me. Why he stopped coming home. I thought I did something bad. I felt my heart crack. I pulled him into my arms, holding him tightly. David took a step forward, guilt all over his face. Tyler. I was confused. I didn't handle things right. But I swear, I did love you. I still do. Tyler looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. Then why did you leave? David had no answer. And Tyler didn't wait for one. He turned and ran to his room, slamming the door behind him. David looked at me, helpless. I think it's time for you to go, I said, standing up, trying to keep my voice steady. But I'm serious. You need to leave. You can't just come back into our lives when you're scared and broken, hoping to be saved. That's not how this works. You hurt him.
Deeply.
And he deserves better. David looked down. For once, he didn't argue. He walked slowly to the door, glanced back one more time, then left. And this time, I didn't think he'd be coming back. After that night, I knew we couldn't keep this tangled mess hidden anymore. It wasn't fair to the boys. They needed the truth, not all the painful parts, but enough to understand why their lives were different now. Rachel and I talked. A lot. We decided to speak with a child therapist who specialized in family transitions. She helped us find the right words, the right way to introduce the idea to Noah and Tyler that things were complicated. And honestly, they handled it better than we expected. We told them they were born on the same day, in the same hospital, and that something happened by mistake. We told them how they were each raised by a mommy who loved them more than anything, even though they weren't the baby that mommy gave birth to. Noah looked at Rachel and said, "So you're not my real mommy?" Rachel looked heartbroken. "I may not have given birth to you, but I am your real mommy, baby. I've loved you from the first moment I held you." Noah smiled and hugged her. "Then you're my realest mommy." "And Tyler?" He looked at me and said, "So Noah is kind of my brother?" I nodded, holding back tears. "In a very special way, yes." He grinned.
Cool.
I always wanted a brother. It was a soft moment. A good one. But not everything stayed soft. A few weeks later, we got a letter. From a lawyer. David had filed for joint custody of Noah. I almost dropped the envelope when I read it. Rachel was just as shocked. "What is he thinking?" she asked. "He didn't even raise him. He barely knows him." I shook my head. It's about control. Or fear. Or maybe he thinks Noah's a backup plan if his health gets worse. Rachel's face went pale. We knew what we had to do. We had to fight. Rachel hired a lawyer. I wrote a statement about David's behavior, his abandonment of Tyler, the way he used people when it was convenient. We gathered hospital records, school records, text messages, everything. It was painful, messy,
scary.
But we were determined. The court date was set.
just weeks away.
And during that time, David got bolder. He showed up at Rachel's house, demanding to see Noah. She called me, terrified. I drove straight over. And when I got there, he was banging on her door, yelling about his rights, saying he was Noah's father and that we couldn't keep him away. I got out of the car, walked right up to him, and said, "If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." He sneered at me. "You're just bitter because I left you." "No," I said calmly. "I'm protective because you hurt my son and you won't hurt Noah too." That's when Rachel came out holding her phone.
"I'm recording this," she said.
"You have 5 seconds to leave." He cursed, turned, and stormed off. Later that night, Rachel couldn't sleep. Neither could I. We talked on the phone, both of us shaken. "This is getting dangerous," she whispered. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I know." A few days later, something unthinkable happened. Rachel's car was broken into. Her purse was gone. So were few files. And Noah's school schedule. We called the police. Filed a report. Told them everything. I knew in my gut it was David. But we had no proof. And then, one morning, Rachel didn't show up to our usual park meetup with the boys. I called her. No answer. Texted her. Nothing. I started to panic. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Rachel crying. "He took him," she sobbed. "He took Noah." My heart stopped. "What? What do you mean, he took him how?" "I was loading groceries," she gasped between sobs. "He was waiting in the parking lot. Grabbed Noah, shoved him in the car, and drove off. I called the police. They're looking for him now." I dropped the phone. My knees gave out. Because in that moment I realized David had kidnapped my son. I couldn't breathe. The world spun around me. I was frozen, standing in my kitchen, staring at the floor like if I blinked too fast, this nightmare would disappear. But it didn't. David had taken Noah, my biological son. I scrambled to pick up my phone and called Rachel back. "Where was this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "What store?" "Lakeside Market," she sobbed. "I parked near the back. I was only gone for a second. I turned around, and he was there. He had a hoodie on. I didn't even recognize him at first." "Did anyone see where he went?"
"Yes."
"A woman saw his license plate. She called the police too. They're tracking him." "Okay," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I'm on my way." I dropped Tyler off with my neighbor, telling him there was an emergency. I kissed his forehead and promised I'd be back soon. I prayed he didn't see how scared I really was. As I sped toward Rachel's, I couldn't stop thinking, how could David do this? I knew he was desperate. But stealing a child? Noah must have been terrified. When I got to Rachel's house, she was standing in the driveway, clutching a photo of Noah in her shaking hands. An officer stood beside her, writing in a small notepad. She ran to me the second she saw me and collapsed in my arms. "I should have held his hand," she whispered. "I should have locked the doors." "No," I said firmly. "This is not your fault. You've done everything right. David did this. He's the one who's wrong." The officer turned to me. "Are you Sarah Miller?" "Yes." "We've issued an Amber Alert. Based on the witness and the plates, we believe David is headed north, possibly toward his sister's cabin near Pine Lake. Does that sound familiar?" "Yes," I said quickly. "He took me there once, years ago. It's isolated. No neighbors for miles." "We're coordinating with local police in that area," the officer said. "But it's a rough trail. We might need time." Time? I wanted to scream. I couldn't just sit here. Rachel and I spent the rest of the day at the police station, giving full statements, handing over every piece of information we had on David, his old addresses, his friends, habits, medications, even his favorite hiding places. Every minute that passed felt like an eternity. Finally, around 9 p.m., we got a call. "He's been found," the officer said. "He was pulled over on Highway 63. Noah is safe." Rachel let out a sob and dropped to her knees. I sat down hard in the nearest chair, burying my face in my hands. They said David didn't resist. He told the officer he just wanted time with his real son. He'd packed the back seat of the car with snacks, toys, even blankets, like it was some kind of twisted camping trip. Rachel and I drove to the police station where they had taken Noah. When we walked in and saw him sitting there, safe and unharmed, both of us burst into tears. Noah ran into Rachel's arms first, crying, "Mommy, I was scared." "I'm here, baby," she whispered over and over, kissing the top of his head. Then he turned to me and said softly, "I missed you too." I crouched down and held him tight. "I missed you more, sweetheart." That night, Rachel stayed at my house. Neither of us could sleep. We took turns checking on the boys, even though they were both safe in bed. The next day, charges were filed against David: kidnapping, child endangerment, violating family rights. The courts acted fast. A restraining order was put in place. He was denied bail. And just like that, he was out of our lives. But the damage, the scars? They were still there. For weeks, Noah had nightmares. He'd cry in his sleep, wake up asking if David was coming back to take him again. Rachel and I worked together to help him feel safe. We kept the boys close. We ate dinners together, took walks, had movie nights. We became a family, not because we had to, but because we chose to. Then, one sunny morning, Rachel and I sat outside with coffee, while the boys played in the yard. "I've been thinking," she said slowly, "maybe we should make it official." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Shared custody. Both of us. For both boys." I blinked. "You mean raise them together?"
Yes.
Co-parenting. Equal. No secrets. No guilt. Just love. We both love them. They both love us. I stared at her, my heart swelling. "I'd love that," I said. And so we started the paperwork. Family court. Mediation. Counseling sessions. And we told the boys, slowly, gently, that they had two moms now. That families can look different, and that love is what makes a family, not blood. They seemed okay with that. More than okay. But then came the hardest part, telling Tyler the full truth. One evening, when he was curled up beside me on the couch, I held his hand and said, "Can we talk?" He looked up at me and nodded. "Do you remember how we talked about how special your bond with Noah is?" He smiled.
Yeah.
"He's my brother, kinda." I nodded.
Yes.
"And you know how we said you and Noah were born on the same day?"
Uh-huh.
"Well, something happened at the hospital when you were born. Something that wasn't anyone's fault, but it was a big mistake." He looked at me carefully. "What kind of mistake?" "The nurses gave me the wrong baby. I raised you, loved you, watched you grow, but I didn't give birth to you." He blinked. "So, I came from another mommy?"
Yes.
"Rachel gave birth to you. And I gave birth to Noah. But from the very first moment I held you, you became my son. Forever."
He was quiet for a long time.
Then he asked, "So, are you still my mom?" I swallowed hard. "Only if you want me to be." He jumped into my lap and hugged me tight. "You'll always be my mom."
And I cried.
I cried because love doesn't care about DNA. It's in the hugs after nightmares, the scraped knees, the bedtime stories, the whispered "I love you" before sleep. Weeks later, we finalized everything in court. Shared parenting rights. Both boys, officially, had two moms. And as we walked out of the courthouse, the four of us holding hands, someone passed by and smiled. "Beautiful family," they said. We smiled back. Because we were. And David? He remained behind bars. The court denied all his motions. No visitation. No contact. He was stripped of his parental rights for both boys. He tried to write letters from jail. We sent them back. We owed him nothing. The last time I heard his name was months later, when an officer called to say David had been transferred to a long-term care facility after his condition worsened. He was alone. Forgotten.
Just like he chose to be. But we
were full of love. A messy, beautiful, unexpected kind of love. And that little white envelope, the DNA test that shattered everything, it's framed in my hallway. Not because of what it revealed, but because it led me to the truth. That family is chosen. That love is stronger than biology. And that even after being left for a mistress, The moment I dropped that DNA test on the table was the moment I began the life I was meant to live.